Sergey, Shealy-Sorin, and I've got with me a wonderful my colleague, Rachel, who is, you're getting your PhD real soon in reversing metabolic syndrome, and you're my right-hand person on left-hand person.
Yeah, now, but, you're a lefty, so I think it's okay.
I'm a lefty, so you're my right-hand person in terms of patient care and just everything metabolic and otherwise. So, and I have a wonderful guest here, Dr. Tom Moorcroft, and this is a man whom I could talk about for a long time. But I would like to start by saying, Tom, welcome to the show. It took us forever to get to the busy schedules to get you on, and the topic is incredible: Lyme disease. So let's start. Who is Dr. Moorcroft? Who are you? What do you do? What do you like? And let's start.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's so great to be here. I'm glad we're able to finally come together and do this. It's been something I've been wanting to do since we met, and I'm sure we'll be doing many more of these. I'm an osteopathic physician, trained in family medicine. I have this background where I love critical care and emergency stuff, but I always wanted to, help people kind of live I believe firmly that everybody has this light inside that they should be shining on the planet and to the world, and really uplifting the people around them. And we need it, as many of us probably realize, we need it more now than ever. So, focusing on emergencies is good, but I think sometimes we actually need to, dive deeper and focus on sort of really promoting self-healing. I think the long and the short of it, Sergey, is like in the background, I always love playing outside, love Mother Nature. I really just want to help people pursue their passions because that's what I want to do. And so when I was I did an undergraduate at the University of Vermont and said, hey, I'm studying terrestrial ecology, wildlife management, landscape, and I want the planet to be here for many, many more generations to be able to enjoy, and mostly selfishly for me to enjoy. And I was like talking to all these old people, people my own age, but we were just talking and we were researching and reading a paper, and then we would discuss, and then we'd go do more research and we'd discuss. And I was like, wait, there's no action being taken. And I'm like, who are the action takers in this world? I was like, oh, kids are. So if I decided to shift a little and instead of do more research, to teach what I had learned and what I love about nature to kids and allow them to have an exploration of the joys that I was experiencing. And if they shared those same joys, give them a path to helping to make a difference in the world. And so what ended up happening was, while I was doing that, I happened to get Lyme disease and got a big old rash. And actually my boss found me staring at a computer screen. And then she's like, why have you done no work? And then she looked down and she's like, why are you drooling on yourself? So they sent me to the doctor. I ended up, between the time they found me drooling on myself and getting into the doctor, got a rash that covered a fifth of my body. Couldn't think, my muscles and joints hurt, terrible fatigue. The guy saw me within 2 minutes. He's like, classic Lyme disease. You've got, take 10 days of doxycycline and you'll be better. And so I felt like crap for about 4 or 5 more days. And then, after 10 days, I did feel better. But over the course of the next couple months, and then ultimately the next 8 years, I got my symptoms of brain fog, joint and muscle pain, and this profound fatigue just crept back in. And I, went to the doctor and I said, these are my symptoms. They're like, oh, well, you have depression, just like your dad does. I'm like, no, I was fine. And everything started hurting. And now I'm getting mad at you for telling me it's in my head. But I said, all right, I trusted the doctor. They gave me some medicine, didn't work. Then they go, oh, I know why it didn't work. It's because you're bipolar, like all the good doctors and lawyers. They have that type 2 bipolar, right? And I'm like, this makes no sense. But I took the medicines, had all the side effects, and I had none of the benefits. So then they go, oh, I know you have ADHD. I'm like, well, no kidding. That's what makes me good at what I do.
You and me both. That's right.
Right? So and then ultimately those medicines didn't work. And I just stuck to a cup of coffee here and there. And I go to my doctor and I said, Doc, I'm dying. This is like 6 years into this journey. And I said, brother, I need help. I've got brain fog, fatigue, muscle pain, and joint pain. And he goes, oh, I know. You have chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. And I'm like, wow, these are just labels for muscle pain, joint pain, fatigue, and brain fog. So I'm like, the problem that came up for me, and I was now I'm really mad, right? Because it's like, I asked you what was wrong with me. You give me a label that doesn't help me understand why I'm sick. and it doesn't give me a path to healing. So the beauty is, at this point, found myself staring at another wall in my apartment in medical school. And I said, I see a path over there. That's the one I've been doing for 6 years. And I know exactly where that's going to end. It's going to continue to go downhill. And then I saw this other path where I'm a young guy, recently married. I want to have a family. I love my animals. I love playing Frisbee. I love hiking, mountain biking, skiing, and I want to play outside. So I'm like, well, if I keep doing what I'm doing right now, I'm going to get more of what I'm doing right now. And if I look forward and I go, oh, that's a possibility. I don't know how to get there, but I know I want it. I'm just going to bet on that one. Because I'm kind of like, they're just telling me it's all going to be downhill. And I'm like, I don't accept that. And literally the moment I did that, within a week, someone handed me a DVD of yoga. And I researched it, and it doesn't even matter the type of yoga. It happened to be the one I needed. And I went back, and I luckily had a teacher that said, hey, you know what, Tom? Yoga is not about contortionism. It's about breath or movement on breath. So if you move into a posture so deep that you can't breathe fully, you've gone too far. And I've used this as a litmus test my whole life, because what I learned was if I was able to breathe deeply and fully, I was more alive. I was more resilient, and I started to heal. So that really was the start of the journey. And over the next 2 years, I did an hour and a half of yoga a day, 6 days a week. And I took the new and the full moon off because that was the rule. And 2 years into it, I'm 75% better. I had changed my diet, my health practice, like everything. But it was only through learning to listen to my body that happened. But one of the things I'm sure some people are going to say is like, wow, man, you're nuts. Like, I'm not going to do an hour and a half a day. And how could you do that? When I started yoga, I could barely touch my kneecaps. That's how like tight everything in my fibromyalgia body had become. And I had tortured it beforehand too. Like, we just didn't know, we were eating a bad diet. I thought soda was a food group. I thought pizza was a food group. That's what I was taught growing up. And so what was beautiful was when I started the yoga, I could do 60 to 90 seconds of a practice. And that was it. And what they said, it's very linear. So you start here and you don't progress and you don't get to the end until you can do every little step. So when you can't do any more, which a minute of yoga was pretty intense back then you sit for the other 89 minutes and breathe. Mm-hmm. And that was so damn hard. But it got me 75% of the way there. And then luckily I met 2 doctors that helped diagnose me 8 years later with Lyme and Babesia and heavy metal toxicity. And over the next 4.5 years, I got them out. And as at the time we're talking, I haven't had a symptom in over 12 years. So I know that you can get better. And I also know how much it sucks to have 13 years of your life be sort of engulfed with this healing journey. But I'm just so thankful that, and that's why I'm so passionate about what we're talking about, because I know that you can, medical gaslighting comes up all the time now, but I know you can feel invalidated and betrayed by the people around you, accidentally or otherwise. And I know how much it hurts, but I also know that if you go within, you can reignite self-healing and come back out on the other end and do all the wonderful, amazing things that you were put on this planet to do. So that's probably longer than I thought I was. I was trying to do the long and the short one, but it didn't go too short.
Thank you. I just had a patient, and Rachel's got something to say too. I just had a patient, literally, just the last patient of the day was actually not the last, but exactly the same presentation. Not exactly, but lots of labs, lots of evaluations. Nothing wrong with you. Positive borderline Lyme, all the classic symptoms, and the young lady is suffering. It's been years. So absolutely. So thank you for speaking up, and thank you for bringing this to attention. This is a huge topic. We have so many Lyme people here, and it's conventional medicine is not doing it right. Rachel. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask kind of along the same lines of you talking about that current patient. So who is your current clientele? Are you seeing just all age ranges, only Lyme, or what's your main, I guess, who do you help the most, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I ended up, starting my private practice. I did family medicine because I wanted to learn more about how we messed people up, and because I'd already clearly understood that. Because it gives us clues on where to apply medicine properly and not. So I started primarily seeing, I was like, I saw one person who had Lyme disease and was effective at treating them. And then I got 2 people. And then by the time you get 3 or 4 people and you get this reputation of knowing what you're doing. So I started seeing a lot of Lyme and tick-borne co-infections, mold illness, and other environmentally acquired illnesses or orally acquired illnesses in the case of heavy metal toxicity frequently are kind of like our big, the big kind of group of people that we do see. But as I got going as a family practitioner, there weren't a lot of people in my area who were willing and or crazy enough to see kids. And I was lucky enough to get taken under the wing of Dr. Richard Horowitz, who primarily sees adults and young adults, and then Dr. Charles Ray Jones, who was in Connecticut, like 40 minutes from my office, and just let me basically live in his office so I could learn everything I could from the guru of pediatric Lyme disease. So right now, I primarily see Lyme and tick-borne co-infections, as well as children with autoimmune encephalitis triggered by all of those things. So we see a lot of PANS and PANDAS, that pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome. So I work a lot with kids, and our practice at any given point is roughly 50% children, or at least my practice, and the rest being adults. So yeah, that's kind of focusing on Lyme and really trying to not be the person who's got like the blinders on, because I've had people come from far away, like they come from Florida or Arizona, and I find they have hypothyroidism. I find that sometimes the thing holding people back isn't the lack of treatment for Lyme, but it's the lack of focusing on all the other things where you can stimulate the healing, like we've talked about in the intro. So that's, I think, Sergey, that's why we kind of hit it off, is like we get all the medicine. We want to get the right diagnosis, the right treatment. I am not attached to the diagnosis. So like I said, I don't care if it's Lyme or thyroid. I need to know what it is, though, so that I can help you get better. And then I want to put I'm really sick and tired of the healthcare system saying, look outside to get better. I want people to bring it back inside, look at their internal ecosystem, that internal locus of control. Because for me, I was blessed. I was sicker than snot. I felt like I was losing my life, but I had no label. So I couldn't become a limey or a moldy or a kid with PANS. I was just, they gave me fibromyalgia, and I was like, oh, that's BS, because I didn't have it beforehand. So that's the closest thing to, but most people don't say I'm a fibromyalgia-y or something. So there's no name for what I had. And so I was really blessed, because then all I could do is choose to be sicker or look to get better. But when I have that diagnosis, I can say I'm a limey. Oh, well, Lyme's hard to get better from. Lyme is a really long road. Most people never get better, but then they just relapse, or they think they're better and then they relapse, or they get bit again. And I was like, I didn't have any of that baloney to buy into. I was just like, I decided I wanted to get better. And so in our practice, we have to find out what it is. We have to know the label to help people get better. But we also don't buy into you are your diagnosis. Lyme is living in me. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. And Sergey, one of the things that's really cool to me is everybody and this is where I piss people off a lot. So I like to do that.
That's good.
It makes them think.
Yes. And
challenge what they've thought they've just become enmeshed with. But one of the people want to know why Lyme is so good at being a long-term persistent illness. Mm-hmm. And the reality of the situation is Lyme does not fight the present moment. It does not fight reality. So what I mean by that is it's been around for over 13 million years, right? So way longer than people. It knows how to hide in bad situations, and it also knows how to thrive when the environment is right for its proliferation. So when it comes into you, what's the first thing it does? It finds a way to hide somewhere away from your immune system, and it goes to opportunistic areas. So if I have a right knee that's busted up like I did from just playing hockey and running in high school, and I have a good left knee, it's going to choose the right one. So it takes that path of least resistance. And then if I start pounding it with antibiotics and herbs or whatever else I'm doing, it just hides. It doesn't go, oh my God, I'm going to fight back. It just goes, hey, you know what? Why don't I just wait until they stop fighting me? And so the beauty is then Lyme will, when you remove the treatments, come back out. And then if you go back after it. So I just say, hey, why not we just say thank you to Lyme for allowing me to learn that I should not fight the present moment and reality of the situation. I will take the treatments I need, and I will make that a ritual of healing rather than a ritual of being sick. And then I just go, yeah, by the way, Lyme, I just told you it was thank you so much for everything, but you're no longer welcome in my body. So you're allowed to go.
Thank you,
Dr.
thank you.
Moorcroft. Can we back up just a little bit for the audience? And so, I think most people are familiar with Lyme and kind of the whole tick-borne illness thing. But can we give them just maybe a little bit, like this much more in depth of kind of what is Lyme?
Sure thing.
Okay, I think that might be helpful for people that are thinking like, well, maybe this is me.
What are they talking about?
Yeah, or that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Lyme disease is the #1 vector-borne disease in the United States. It's transmitted by the bite of an infected deer tick or a black-legged tick. And we have the technical name is Ixodes scapularis in the East Coast, and in the West Coast, we have Ixodes pacificus. They're basically, which is the Western black-legged tick. So not all ticks carry Lyme. Most ticks carry some infections, but it's really that deer tick that we're most concerned about. That's the one that we know is transmitting it. And it also can have other infections. So if you hear the term co-infection, it just means the tick has more than one thing. And our common infections are Lyme, which is Borrelia burgdorferi, and a few other similar ones. Borrelia miyamotoi, which is a tick-borne relapsing fever that looks a little bit like its cousin. It's a cousin of Lyme, but we also have babesiosis in those ticks. And though Borrelia miyamotoi and babesia can kind of look like malaria, and we can, and then there's like anaplasma, which is another big one, and some viruses. And so when a deer tick bites you, it has an anesthetic and an anticoagulant. So some people, they want, basically it wants to feed, take a blood meal from you. And then in the process, the spirochete swims into you. And so one of the big fallacies out there is that the tick has got to be feeding on you for over 36 hours to transmit Lyme. What we know is that from there's the mama or the adult deer tick, which is the one with the big orange on the backside of it. They do definitely transmit Lyme, but about 95% of Lyme is transmitted by the nymph, and that nymph is the size of a poppy seed. So this is like essentially a baby, a juvenile. And so the issue is it being so small, it's really hard for us to see it. And now most of the time that'll feed for about 4 days. So once you get past that 2.5 days, at 36 hours, if it's infected, the likelihood of it transmitting to you is very, very high. But we've actually seen transmission of infections from a deer tick in less than 8 hours. So this whole thing and most people can't tell you how long a tick's been on. So to me, if you've been bitten by a tick, especially if you're on the East Coast or the Midwest, where we have a really high likelihood of that tick having Lyme in it, it's a high risk tick bite. It's not just, it hasn't been on, because very few people really know how long it's been on. And so then usually within if you were infected by a bite of a tick, and let's say you didn't see it, sometimes you're going to get the telltale sign that everybody's looking for is this erythema migrans rash or a bullseye rash. That in the CDC says it's present in about 70% of people. And then the problem is in the medical research, the papers are all 40 to 60%. So they're floating around 50% of people will have this EM rash. And we call it the erythema migrans rash, and EM, just so we don't have to keep saying these long technical terms. But most people are told to look for a bullseye, that ringed rash where you're seeing a central clearing, then you have red rash, and then a clear ring and another red ring. The problem is that in the research is only about 20 to 30% of all EM rashes. And most rashes that are from Lyme are these purple blotches or these red blotches. So they're frequently missed because people don't know what they're looking for. And they're like, oh, it's not a bullseye, so don't worry about it. I'm like, well, they often more commonly look like a bruise. So 50% of people don't get a rash, and 50% of the people who do get a rash, it doesn't have to be a bullseye all the time. So that's our big one. And then it's summer flu, right? So the classic presentation is joint pain, brain fog, fatigue. I feel like I've got the flu, but it's the middle of July or August. And that's kind of your classic acute presentation. You can have things like Bell's palsy, the drooping of the face. You can, in situations where they might go see Sergey in the ER or something, you might get heart block, but those are less common in the early presentation. And then later on, we can get, if we didn't really have an initial presentation of that, or as a mild flu-like illness and we got over it, and no one looked for Lyme. Then 6 months, 12 months later, you can start to have more arthritic things, more neurologic symptoms. We see a lot of gastrointestinal symptoms. But that's kind of the basic thing so my big thing is let's look for acute Lyme and treat it aggressively so that people don't get persistent chronic Lyme. And so it's really that, like, when you're getting that, when you think you have the flu, but it's the middle of the summer and COVID's not the big thing anymore, or you've been out like in the park or gardening in your yard and you think you got a bite and you had a weird rash that came and went, definitely be thinking about this, to make sure that you don't end up like me.
So what does a like aggressive treatment, what does that look like, I guess?
Good question. Yeah. Tom, what do you do? You got a clinic that specializes in Lyme.
Yeah. So how do you treat it?
Yeah. How do you treat it? If you don't mind. Yeah.
Well, I think that the standard of care is 10 to 14 to 21 days. And yes, I did say 3 different numbers that don't make sense, but the range is 10 to 21 days of doxycycline, right? And we use doxycycline because it covers a lot of the other infections that you can get from the tick, like anaplasma, that could actually could kill you more likely than Lyme. But it's interesting. The research shows that if you give 14 to 21 days of doxycycline, about 80% of people will get better and most likely not have problems later on. But the problem is the follow-up, like with a lot of things in medicine, is poor, and they present 6 or 8 months later with fibromyalgia. So we don't have good data on those people. But we know that about 20% of people don't get all the way well, even with that acute treatment. And then everyone seems to be silent on this. And there's some research showing that you could get what we call persister cells. So persisters are ways that Lyme protects itself, like we were talking earlier, in that inhospitable environment. So they roll up into a ball. We call it a cyst. They can create a whole. They can all get together and hang out and like go camping in a biofilm or a fat and polysaccharide like shield over top of them. So, and there's some other persister mechanisms, but there's some preliminary evidence that shows ticks, the spirochete, that bacteria that causes Lyme called Borrelia burgdorferi, can actually morph into those within the tick, and it's roughly 20% of the time. And it can be injected into mice in an experimental setting, and about 20% of them will get persistent Lyme right away. So there's some new evidence showing that both sides of this argument might actually be right. Because in my area of expertise, I'm seeing people who didn't get better right away. So I have a selection bias towards chronic Lyme disease. And then if you're working in acute care, you're working in primary care, you may just be seeing people get the acute thing. So you're selecting for people who don't get chronic Lyme. So I think that there's not as much fighting going on here if you read the newspaper or you search online, there's like these 2 camps that never shall come together again. The reality is we're both actually probably talking some semblance of truth. So when I treat people acutely, I tend to just, say, hey, I'm going to give you a standard of care medication. The problem with doxycycline is people get sunburned very easily on it. And typically when we're treating the acute Lyme people, we're seeing them in this, over the summer or early fall, where that can be problematic. But the one thing I want to point out is the CDC has really great evidence that acute Lyme is diagnosed in all 12 months out of the year. And when I went to the University of Vermont back in the mid 90s, it was like there was no ticks up in northern Vermont, and now there are. So global climate change has made access to ticks, because we don't have as much of a freeze, the tick range is expanded, and we're also seeing a lot more acute Lyme in the middle of the winter. Like the East Coast had not much of a winter really this year. So we have to be aware of that. So I typically will combine in an acute situation some antibiotics with herbs that I know treat both acute Lyme and have evidence to treat persister forms, because I want to just make sure acute Lyme is done. Because I could have literally gotten 30 days of an antibiotic and a big bottle of an herb if we didn't have that evidence back then. But if we knew what we know now, I could have literally been cured with 30 days. And I wouldn't even be doing this. I'd just be doing osteopathic manipulation and chilling out in my little room. And then chronic Lyme is a whole different beast where we have to look at, the whole, I mean, not that acute Lyme shouldn't be a whole person based thing, but when you see someone with chronic illness, we really need to step back and find out what the body's priorities in healing are. We can certainly, if we want to, dive into that. But my goal would be that everybody in the whole world who got acute Lyme could get diagnosed and treated appropriately with some meds and some herbs and maybe eradicate this thing right up front. That would be an amazing, amazing thing.
Wonderful, Doc. Wonderful. Let's, pardon. Let's talk about other things, other organ systems, other modalities that are essential in addressing chronic Lyme, because now we addressed the acute, which is what most people think of, but this is the true pandemic. This is a true concern. Chronic undiagnosed Lyme, and these folks, like you said, there's a whole bunch of labels, which literally it's because the conventional medicine has no idea what we're doing, frankly.
Right.
Tom, or should I say Dr. Moorcroft? I
Dr.
have a lot of
Tom,
for you. Tom, all right, perfect. Thank you, brother. You are a brother from another mother. And so let's talk about how you, to the degree that we have, and we only have a certain amount of time,
right.
What are some of the concepts and some of the basic principles? And I know we're not going to get into all the detail. How do you work with chronic Lyme? What are the components? What do you need to have?
Yeah, I think you're kind of referencing like when you step back and you're looking at the whole person, kind of, from that angle.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like, osteopathy, naturopathy, even chiropractic are things that are uniquely North American. And so the tradition I come out of, the osteopathic tradition, was a frontier MD in the mid 1800s who was like, he was like, we're giving arsenic and strychnine and that's not working. We're doing bloodletting. That ain't working. And oh, by the way, this manipulation thing works. So stop doing those things and add these things. So everybody laughed at him like he's a nut job. And so he had to create his own, new medical tradition that's uniquely American. And in 1892, his first class had women, people of color, blacks, Native Americans, white dudes, white women, like everybody was part of this mix. And the reason I bring that up is this tradition is about being inclusive and looking at what the source of the issue is. And he said, hey, the body has this amazing self-healing, self-regulatory mechanism. And if I view everything we do as catalyzing healing, because I just look and we say, hey, where's the body? What's the body prioritizing as it's in its path to healing, and where is it stuck? So anything of the medicine and ozone therapy, PEMF, whether it's peptides, meditation, whatever I prescribe, I want it to be a catalyst for healing. And then in the case of like food and breath work and meditation, maybe I never remove that because healthy eating is a good thing. But, maybe I don't need to do as much IV, nutrition anymore, or maybe I don't need the herbs. So I remove things, or even an antidepressant. It's a catalyst for healing when it's appropriate, then I remove it. So I'm just looking at what is the priority. So some of the common priority, and then I want to stimulate it and then get out of the way so that we can get the body to do the work. So it's not relying on me, it's relying on itself, which is why I'm always saying bring back that locus of control internally and reach out for help when you need it. So common places people get stuck, if we kind of start on the big level, people with Lyme have multiple different infections. They can also have multiple exposures to other things, like a lot of my people in most of the country, but especially the Northeast, have mold exposures. So I just think about it as my cup here, right? It's like right now I need a refill because the water's at the bottom. But if I'm the vessel and this is my toxicity level, this is a pretty healthy person. But if I'm up here and then I get Lyme disease and I'm overflowing and sick, now I have chronic toxin overload. And the question is, if I treat the Lyme, like, will I actually come back down? So I have to see where it's broken and what the toxins are. So mold and mycotoxins are a common issue. Heavy metals become a common issue. To me, stress is the number one cause of inflammation in the developed world, bar none, by a long shot. And the more and more the world starts to adopt all these cool things that we have here, like this thing, the more and more I see it become a bigger problem. So psychological stressors and just stress in general will lead to inflammation. We find that like the standard American diet, as we're talking nutrition and stuff, I mean, we get so much inflammation in our gut from the way we eat, from the way we process our emotions, or the lack of wanting to experience emotion because we want to feel everything safe. Like people have a difficult time experiencing unpleasant emotions frequently because we're not taught by our parents how to do it.
And in the world, there's a good, the bad, and the ugly, and hiding your head in the sand doesn't make it go away. So, but please continue.
Yeah. And so I just look at it. It's like, why is my gut, right? Like a lot of people are terrain people and they often will say that word and then start in the gut. Well, what's really important to me about the gut is our food plays a role. How we deal with our emotions and our stress plays a role. Mold toxins can be essentially act like an antibiotic in our gut. So exposure to mold, you may never have had an antibiotic, but you can still have dysbiosis, that imbalance of your gut bacteria, with perfect everything except you had a mold exposure, because that's essentially like inhaling an antibiotic. And then we look at kind of the way our stress plays with thinking and anxiety and its relationship to the gut, that vagus nerve that connects our brain to our heart and to our gut. If we clip it, we don't remember things and we can't create new memories. We can't retrieve old ones and we get anxiety. But if our vagus nerve is working great and we wipe out our gut bacteria, we can also lead to the same exact phenomena: inability to retrieve memories, inability to take short-term memories and make them long-term memories, and a poor stress and response that leads to anxiety and stuff like that. So to me, the gut brain heart connection is something we need to really focus on as a core piece. And I always had the heart in there because I think a lot of people just say gut brain axis. The vagus nerve actually connects all of that directly. And they're the three systems in our body that have completely autonomous nervous systems. So we need to look at all of those. And I start there. And one of the things, Sergey, and that I think is so cool, I literally ask people to tell me their story.
Yes.
One more time. And they are allowed 1 to 2 pages to write the whole story. Then they're allowed an entire visit to tell me their story and truly be heard. Because if you want to know where to start, listen to the story. Because that's really the key. To me, it's like, I hate when my Bartonella's acting up, my Lyme's acting up. I can handle that one. I can figure that out. This is all I've done for the last 15 years. And my personal healing journey has been the last 25. So I got that one nailed for you. So don't worry, I will know if it's Lyme or Bartonella. Let's focus on what is really your experience of your own life.
Thank you, Tom.
In there, I can find it, right?
Thank you. Actually, it's incredible. We haven't talked about this, but this is one of my hallmarks. When I see a person for the first time, first patient visit, my first question, no matter how busy it gets, and this young lady, for example, with Lyme disease, if I remember correctly, she went right into it. It's like, okay, I have this concern, and boom, boom, they pinpoint. Can you fix it? And it's like, I guess, my reply was basically very simple. We'll get there. We have plenty of time to talk. I want to know about you. Tell me about your story.
Yep.
From birth, from beginning. What a good thing, good, bad, ugly, personal, professional, health, and interestingly enough, it doesn't take much for a person to open up and to reveal the true nature of the condition and the underlying factors. But please,
well, and I, Sergey, I think it's so important what you're saying, because a lot of times. The big question is, like, let's just take where my practice home base is, right? Connecticut. You would be hard pressed to find a person in Connecticut who has not at some point in their life been exposed to Lyme disease. It is just so rampant everywhere. Now, there definitely are people who haven't been exposed, but I use the term exposed very carefully. I didn't say got sick from it, but why do some people get bit by a tick and get Lyme and not get sick? Why do some people get bit by a tick, get Lyme, get sick, and don't get treated and go on to be healthy? And then the other person is they get sick, they get treated, and they get healthy. And then there's someone who gets bit by a tick, whether they know it or not. But as far as we know, that's the number one by a very long shot. 99.8% plus of all Lyme is from a tick bite. People are looking at other possibilities, and with the numbers out there may be, but currently as we're talking, that's it, right? That is like 99.8% plus of all the Lyme. So pay attention to the ticks. But the point being, why are some people so sick? And so if I rewind a little to this pandemic thing we've got, I decided that, and I had talked this way in Lyme beforehand, but I think the pandemic, it resonates with more people right now because everybody knows what that is, even if they don't know about Lyme. You want to go into Lyme disease, or in this case, the viral illness of COVID, being the world's worst viral host, the world's worst bacterial host. Literally, like, I want Lyme disease and the tick to look at me and go, oh shit, that's Tom. No way, I'm out. I'm going to go to someone else who's more opportunistic for me. And it's really interesting because before I went through this personal healing journey, I was bitten by ticks all the time. And after I changed my diet, I changed my attitude, I worked on my past trauma and my current trauma and even my future trauma. I worked on everything that made Tom, including big diet changes, getting rid of the standard American diet and moving. And I am not like one of these people who are like gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, fun-free, flavor-free, enjoyment-free. My family and I had some kind ice cream bar things that we balance it, right? But I can do that because I have the flexibility because I'm so healthy now. But I wouldn't do that early on. But anyway, the point being is I still play outside. And since I got better, I have not found a tick on me. Now, I'm smart and I pay attention to them, but literally there's research about pheromones and people haven't followed up enough to know what that is to help. Because we could literally probably make a perfume or a cologne for us men out there, but that could repel ticks because it doesn't smell good to them. And there's this, again, why aren't we looking in it? We need more research dollars to go into that because before I got sick and when I was sick, I was a tick magnet. After I led this healthy lifestyle that I know you and I have talked so much about and that your whole wellness institute is teaching people all the time and all the things that we're talking about are like, when you do that, you become, they know. Yes. Literally, there's evidence that the mitochondria in these spirochetes, the bacteria that give you Lyme, communicate with our mitochondria. So the energy factories in all of our cells. And so when was the last time that you thanked your body for doing its job right? And
absolutely.
That, right? So they tell you, but they bitch about it when it's not working. So your body gets negative reinforcement. Love on yourself. You have an ecosystem in you that's not just your brain.
Tom, you are brilliant. Actually, I'm going to say one more thing about this amazing guy here. Tom, when we first met, you gave me something, and I'd like to share this with the rest of the world, so to speak. The 3 things. Do you remember what that is? I've been practicing that from the very moment you told me, on and off. Initially, it was hard to get into. Now I don't leave my bed without it. I don't go to sleep without it. Do you want to talk about it? Because I can present it in a kind of like broken telephone line, or it can come from the
straight from the source.
Yeah. Please. Well,
the source is actually Dan Sullivan, and he works with a guy by the name of Dr. Ben Hardy, who's and Ben reached out to Dan. They started writing books together. But Dan is a coach for entrepreneurs, and I just heard Ben talking about one of their books. I grabbed their books, and it's an interesting concept. So I'd highly recommend it to anybody listening. It has nothing to do directly with your health and everything to do indirectly and optimal overarching about your health. There's a book called The Gap and the Gain. And so I'll tell you how to get into the gain in a second. But the idea being is you're here, you started here, and you want to get there. And so when you come and you check in with Sergey or myself, you're right here. But what do people usually focus on? They focus on the gap where they want to go, they haven't gotten. I want you to focus on the gain. Look at how much progress you've made. Have the gratitude for the progress, because otherwise it's 100% an uphill battle. Yeah. Right. So, and the thing is, I tell people all the time, you're not going to forget where you want to go. And like if the where you were and where you want to go is like the absence of releasing Lyme from your life, because we want to release it, because when we release something, it doesn't come back. That's the whole point of it. It's like weight loss. You don't want to lose weight. You want to release weight, because mentally the semantics really matter. Yes. But you're not going to wake up and forget you have Lyme. So when I said my path was dark over here, or I could try and get that one over there, I never forgot I was sick. In fact, when I focused on what I wanted to do, I had more energy and more motivation to do what it was to get there. And I think that's important. So the practice you're talking about helps us focus on the gain area. And it's to honor the gain, because basically what we're doing when we focus on the gap here, we are spending all of our time on a negative meditation of what we don't want, how hard it is to get there, instead of saying, wow, I've made progress and I have places to go too.
Boom. Absolutely.
So what are there like actual actionable steps that you're doing every night that you
100%.
have? Okay.
So
Yeah. So
at the end of your day, you give yourself 3 minutes and no more, because when you make it longer, it becomes a chore. You write down, the first thing you do is you write down 3 wins from the day.
Yes.
And when you're feeling great, 3 wins is pretty easy to come up with. When you're not feeling well, it might have been, I was able to go to the bathroom once out of 10 times on my own, or whatever, right? And if you had a really crappy day and you can't think of any wins, think of a lesson you learned from the day that you're going to implement at some point in the future. And what I found is it's like a sip of wine, right? It's not that you're drinking wine and getting drunk. It's that one little sip where you're savoring it. So a lot of times the smallest little thing that you think is crap is actually your biggest key. So just write down 3 things, big, small, indifferent, doesn't matter, that you view as a win for today. And then that should take you less than 90 seconds. It's just like boom, boom, boom. Then the cool part is you go, hey, I'm going to write down 3 wins that I'm going to have tomorrow.
Yes.
You're going to plan them. And again, it's just 3 things that you want to go in your favor tomorrow. I can go to the bathroom twice on my own, or whatever it might. That's a pretty extreme example, but. And then what you do is you just read, after you write these 6 things down, you read them over once and you put it down and you go to bed. And now the first couple of days you're like, whatever, I don't even understand what Tom's talking about. But the benefit of this is when you pre-program what's going to happen for tomorrow, immediately your conscious mind says, I can think of all the reasons that's not going to happen. But when you go to sleep, you dissociate from your conscious mind, and this allows the subconscious mind to essentially become your superconscious, connect with the universe or God or source or life, whatever you want to think. I'm hoping nobody listening to this can argue with me that we're alive, right?
Yes.
So connect to whatever it is that's living and breathing you, and use whatever word you want. But that's what transitions you to superconscious, and you can get downloads of new possibilities that you never thought of before. But you don't have to try because you just went to bed.
yeah.
And then you get up the next day, you read all 6 of them, and you're done. Takes you 20 seconds at most. And so now you've invested 3 minutes and 20 seconds into your healing. Now, in the first 3 or 4 days, some people see really big things, but usually by day 5 to 7, people are like, oh my God, I have 12 things from the day that were incredible. And then you keep seeing momentum. And then by the end of the first week, when you do this exercise for 3 minutes and read it over, now it starts to put you into the parasympathetic state. You start to feel the gratitude in your heart, which gets you even more parasympathetic. And then everyone who's been saying, I can't sleep, I'm an insomniac for the first week while I was just talking about going to sleep and connecting, now you're also able to go to sleep more easily because you've gotten your nervous system in there. And it's like automatic. You can't even control it. It is literally all you have to do is commit 3 minutes to yourself, and it works. It is unbelievable. And you will start to see. So the part I didn't say about the yoga DVD, it was kind of a coincidence. And then 2 years later, I was going to do a rotation in my residency, but I would have to leave home for a month. At the last minute, a coincidental change in someone else's schedule made it possible for me to go to a practice right down the road where they happen to be doing osteopathic manipulation and treating chronic Lyme disease. So I walked into the door, and for the first time in 8 years, I met all their patients sounded like me. And I was so inspired that they're all sick and I'm sick, but I'm mostly better, but I still have a place to go. But it's so amazing when you can see a community. But those coincidences only occurred because I bought into my own future. And so this exercise is so simple. I buy into the fact that there's shit that happens in my day, and I also honor the fact that that's there, and that there's good things that also happen in my day. So when we take our meditation because think about it, if you were to do this, I ask patients, I would love for you for 2 days to write down everything you say to yourself, the theme of it, not like record it. You literally don't need to do this for more than an hour, because everything you say to yourself this hour is what you're saying to yourself all the time. 95% of what we say to ourselves is the same thing. So if I can change it and add a little bit, these 3 things that are amazing today and 3 things that are going to be amazing tomorrow, then wake up in the morning and read those 6 things and go, oh, in addition to the things I don't like in my life, there's actually some really good stuff. And the more we start to savor what's going on in our life, that's what reignites self-healing. And so for me in my healing journey, I was able to receive those treatments and they work so much faster and with so many fewer side effects because I had already learned to focus on the most important thing, which is vibrating at the frequency I want my body to vibrate at, which is love. In my case, I use the word love. You can use whatever word you want, but love is it. And
love
when
is,
you focus on that.
Yeah, that's the answer. Love is the answer. Beatles, they got it.
Oh, right.
Tom,
I'm hearing a lot of Beatles songs lately. And then I noticed this yesterday. I'm like, I've heard it. Why am I hearing this so much lately? And then you just bring it up. And so now I know why.
Tom, I got to say the word love, right? When I first came across, when I first saw you, literally, and I've had a near death out of body. So I read energies. And the first thing before you even said hello, it's like I saw a halo around you. And it's like I can do that when I can relax and just kind of, and I'm like, no, this human is really representative of the concept of love. So then that's when I came and said hello to you. I didn't know what I was going to do, but it's like just, wow.
And immediately we connect on that resonance. So this is the other thing too. I think this is such an important point. So if you want to change your outcomes, you have to change the people you talk to and hang out with, if you can, because I'm not saying disown your family. And more importantly, you have to change your vibration.
Maybe you can do that.
Or set some boundaries, boundaries
well, right.
Too.
That is so key, right? And so the cool part for me is, and I say a few things where I'm like, hey, change the people you hang out with. Well, sometimes you do need to, but mostly I want people to think, the best way to change your child is to change you. Because and the best way to change the way your spouse behaves is to change the way you feel about them. Because we are all so powerful. And this is the thing. I love Marion Williams's quote, which I should just leave up on my screen because I bastardize it all the time. Sorry, Marion. But it's basically, she says, it's not our darkness that scares us. It's our light. We are powerful beyond belief, and our light is the thing. And I can tell you, I am so scared at how powerful I am.
I had that experience so many times, just coming back from a near-death experience. And again, this is maybe not so much a medical topic, but, just the light, the power, it's like just coming in. I mean, just it was a traumatic motor vehicle accident. I mentioned this previous program, but, the feeling of love, it was overwhelming, but it was also scary. It took me time to settle into it. I mean, it was a gift, but it's like, oh God, this is so much.
And what a great litmus test, right? So
to
me, when I lean into it, but I still feel that love piece, but I'm afraid and I'm timid, but it's expansive. So if it's contractive, if you can most people can feel when they get all contracted down and or when they're like this, but if you're there's a little bit of excitement and a possibility of, oh my God, I might fall off the face of the planet. This scares the crap out of me. Lean into it.
Go for it.
Yes, you're literally on the edge of a cliff and then don't lean into that. But most people are going to be contracted at that point, unless they're a daredevil with a parachute or me on skis, in which case we just go for it because it feels alive. But yeah, it's this crazy thing that can you imagine I'm just thinking as we were talking about this, how scary it is for people when I tell them they can heal themselves.
Yes.
Because now you have the responsibility to do it.
Yeah.
The responsibility, ability to respond, but also the duty to respond because you got to do it. Yes.
And it doesn't mean you have to do it alone. And it doesn't mean, but do not give this away. Do not give this to somebody else where you have to go and just be in this situation where, I have to have the pill. I have the new supplement. I have to buy their program and yes, those things are there because they're helpful at the right time in the right place. But do not use them as a substitute for how amazing you are. Because I just want to say this one thing, because I see so many kids. My 13-year-old daughter, there are so many times where as she was growing up, she's kind of doing one of these to me. They're in the other room flipping you off, but they're always doing this. And they're always doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so if you're sneaking the cookies with gluten in them and you want them to be gluten-free, guess what? Even if they don't catch you, energetically they know. And this is the thing about your partner. You want your partner to behave different, feel differently about them here, be more objective. And so you are such a powerful leader of an influencer of everyone around you. And if you start doing that practice that Sergey reminded us to talk about, and you do your 3 wins for today and your 3 wins for tomorrow, and you do that for a couple of weeks, you'll see everything in your whole life change. And you have just changed your vibration. You've raised your vibration to a higher level that you want to share with others, and they will come with you or they'll leave. And there might be a bump in the road, don't get me wrong, but if you change super rapidly, people around you, but
yes,
very important to do.
Tom, I just like to jump in. We could talk for many, many, many sessions, and many visits, and we will. This is the beginning.
Absolutely.
So I just want to mention some of the things that we do in our practice, and just want to see if you can weigh in on some of this.
Yes.
So obviously, when it comes to a Lyme patient, we get a lot of those folks, and unfortunately, the conventional medical system has failed most of those folks.
And we live in the woody Midwest.
And as Rachel said, so the foundation, I'm going to basically, I know we don't have as much time, so we're going to just focus briefly, but the foundation before, as I start to see a person, I always say the foundation, it's like building a house. And whether it's Lyme disease, cancer, whether it's metabolic syndrome, in other words, diabetes, cholesterol, hypertension, obesity, strokes, heart attacks, whether it's mental, emotional, whatever it is, you've got to start at the foundation. The foundation is the lifestyle. What we eat, garbage in, garbage out, good things in, good things out, activity, body's meant to move, sleep, rest, circadian cycles, recovery, and also stress management. And Rachel is a huge part of that, because I don't have time as a doc necessarily to spend multiple hours with a patient, but this is where I say, you've got to see Rachel. Rachel, what do you say on this?
Well, I mean, and I don't know specifically with Lyme. I mean, I have some ideas, but Lyme is not obviously my specialty, but I do understand that the body needs the right tools to heal. And, like I would assume a bacteria like that is probably going to thrive off of something like sugar and essentially the standard American diet. So if we can't clean that piece up and we're throwing all the other things at it, I mean, it's just garbage in, garbage out. And the same with the thoughts, same thing. And so
exactly.
Yeah. So so I come in where I have to look at the details of what are you eating day to day? How is this going? What's going on in your head day to day? And again, if people aren't willing to make those uncomfortable changes, I think then they're not willing to be part of their healing process. And that's that whole taking ownership and recognizing some of this may not be fun, but it's worth it, Well,
I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I mean, whatever we can do to the body, we separate out, we're reductionist, so that we can, if there is an infection, we know what it is, and we can give you a treatment that we've tested to see that it works on it. But I've polled a gazillion doctors. And Sergey, I can even ask you, when you give someone with a pneumonia an antibiotic, do you completely sterilize their lungs of bacteria with your antibiotic?
Oh, God, no, absolutely.
Right. And all we're trying to do is bring down the level of the infection until such time that the body has the ability to recover and it does the rest of the work. So whatever infection, whatever stressor, even a broken bone, the principles of functional medicine and holistic approach work. You look at things like, I know you guys do some ozone and C and things of that nature. Ozone. The reason I want to know your diagnosis is not because I don't think ozone works well in a lot of people, but in Lyme people, it may work better than people with mold exposure. And in mold, you may, if you're going to use it, want to insufflate rectally or even, with a modified stethoscope in the ears rather than giving IV. But it depends on the person. PEMF is something that I know we both use a lot of. This is raising the vibration to the point where not that we're treating a specific thing, we're raising the body's frequency up and giving it energy to get the work done. And that's the part I think is so important, is do the things that make sense for everything, because we will help you get to your highest level of health. My goal is that that's completely cured. It's not always possible in everybody. We don't pretend that. But so for me, how much would it have sucked if all I did was get better from Lyme and then I fell apart from high cholesterol, diabetes, and all these other things?
Yes.
So once you get to the end point, I want this to not be like you lost 13 years of your life, that you use that to optimize your health. So now it's like I ski all the time. I'm literally outside almost every single, or I am outside every single day, but I'm outside playing pretty hard, beating the crap out of my body in a loving way, hopefully, but every single day that I can. And like, if I'm not like on my bike or skiing more than 300 days a year, I'm thinking I'm not even alive, and that's okay for me. But man, could you imagine if I'd gotten better from brain fog, fatigue, and joint pain, but my body was decrepit in other ways, and I couldn't participate in what I loved? So we do all these things to support our body to get to the place where we can express our passion. Because like I said in the beginning, everybody here I would love for everyone listening to feel so good and that they can share that light in their heart with the world. We need it so much. And a friend of mine who I'm in an accountability group with, because a lot of us who are driven come up with big ideas and we don't always follow through and everything.
That's why we stay in touch.
Right?
Absolutely.
He goes, hey, I think what you're trying to tell everybody is that the healing is in the living. So it's not about healing and then living.
Yes.
It's healing is in the living.
May I jump in here on this, because this is actually fascinating. Holism, spirit, soul, mind, body. We're not physical beings with possible spiritual connection. We are spiritual beings. We're energy. We're living, moving energy. And we are incredible. We don't know who we are. We don't know our capacity for healing. We don't know what we're capable of in good and in bad. There's the good and the bad. There's heaven and hell here on earth, literally. And we choose it. We choose the light or we choose the shadow. And then the question is from the spiritual end, now you've got the control center, the mind, the limbic system. You can go into all kinds of stuff. You can go into the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal. I can go into all kinds of fancy terminology. The bottom line is, who is in control of your control center? Tom, brilliant. Take back your life. If you're not in control of your life, who is? Are you happy with the results? If you're happy with the results, fine. Nothing I can do for you.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Exactly. You think you can do better? Let's do better. Change the pattern. Einstein definition of insanity: doing the same things, same crap, and expecting a different result.
So yeah, for sure.
I'm thinking what Rachel just said too. Just one quick thing you said that's so important, I think, to point out to people is that you were saying that, like, hey, some people are like they don't want to do something that's uncomfortable. Well, like, there's a thing called hormesis, where basically we have these hormetic stressors that actually allow us to get stronger and create more energy. And everybody's like, how do I get more energy? How do I improve my mitochondria? How do I clean up my body? How do I do this? Well, you have to push a little bit into uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because it's if you have a stressor, a toxin, even at a low dose for a short period of time, it can actually stimulate growth and healing. But if you do nothing or you do too much, those both can weaken the system. But strengthening the system is pushing just a little bit into that uncomfortable place. And that works for peak performance mentally and physically. So just don't be afraid to do something that's a little bit uncomfortable. But if you're doing something, and obviously don't start drinking micro doses of snake venom or that's just stupid.
Right.
But I mean, the point being is you challenge yourself a little, do something that's a little bit out of your comfort zone so that you can grow. You're worth it. You're worth receiving the healing. You deserve it. You're this amazing light being, this spiritual being having this physical experience. We can talk about that all day long.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I wish we could. I will say, this is
this is where the yes.
I'm the keeping us on track.
No,
and it's awesome. Everything you guys are saying is it's all so true. But we do have to get.
Let's mention a couple of things. So we do have a couple of folks here in town that are wonderful, and so there's Spring Valley, great service. They carry a lot of Dr. Shealy's favorites: Youth Formula, Essentials, Magnesium, lots of good things that are very essential for a Lyme patient. Nutrients, basic macros, but a lot more. Great store, wonderful service. And the other thing that I'd like to say is Dr. Shealy's favorite. Again, Dr. Shealy's been doing this program. Well, I'm taking over for the last 7 years. Tart cherry juice concentrate from Coloma. If you're not getting your veggies, at least do that. Antioxidants, great for you and just really wonderful, but get your veggies in. it's important. And there is one thing that I do want to say, there's a Mother's Day sale, 15% off on all of our products at normshealy.shop, including bliss oils, youth and essentials, eugesterone, PEMF, scalar, lots of different things. We don't have time to go into all of this, but Dr. Shealy is really the founding father of holistic medicine. And since we're talking about Lyme, I want this to be an opportunity for folks to jump in and partake in some of the modalities. Now, Tom, there's also a way to contact you as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for throwing up. I just see the Doctor Talks Summit come up. We have and one other thing, all the stuff you just said about your sponsors and the sales, these are really important things in the Lyme people community, because a lot of people, because of the infections, they can't get everything they need. They can't eat all the food, or they may have too much nausea. So things like tart cherry juice can help tons. So all of these little things have their place, and you should use them under the guidance of the proper people who can help guide you. But it's just so important. And I just wanted to highlight that I use a ton of supplements, meds. I use PEMF, cherry juice, the whole 9 yards, because we can't get it all. And sometimes we need that extra catalyst. So there's definitely this is just some really great information that you're just sharing, and that opportunity for people. We do have the Lyme Summit coming out May 9th through 16th. And partnered with my buddy, Dr. Darren Engels and Dr. Talks to present this. Starting May 9th at 6 p.m. every day for 24 hours, you get free access to 8 speakers. I do a pre and a post thing. And every day starting the 10th through the 16th, we're going to do a live Q&A at 5 p.m. Eastern. All the information is over at that link there, where you're looking at drtalks.com/Lyme-summit. And I think you can just do lyme.drtalks.com too. That'll help. And if anybody wants to find us, we're over at originsofhealth.com, and you can find us on Facebook at Origins of Health. And then, and on YouTube, and then Instagram, it's just Dr. Tom Moorcroft.
And Tom, I just want to say that we see our fair share of Lyme patients and similar things. But I'm going to say, when I do encounter a situation that is scratching my head, which happens, today, if not more.
Of course.
I just want everyone to know that you are the consult. You are the person that I reach out to, and I say, Tom, I'm stuck, or I need some insight here. And thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you are. And by the way, we're going to be on our end promoting and putting out there the summit, the Doctor's Talk, because we want everyone to be aware of this. And whether you have Lymes, whether a family member has Lymes, or whether there's potential to get Lymes, knowledge is power.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And the summit is for, like you said, people who don't have it, people who do have it, people who don't want to get it. And also there's a ton for practitioners. And the last thing I would say is we do have a mentorship program for physicians. So, and, because you and I can't do this alone. This is a village. So, we have the mentorship, and you can reach out to us on any of those channels. We can let you know all about it. But just something where, because a lot of docs are just like, hey, I see 4 or 5 Lyme patients a year. I want to make sure I do it right. We've got the opportunity for just, to have that answered and get the experience, so that we can help minimize the suffering of patients, and we can all together make this world a better place.
Amen, brother.
That's awesome.
So
I love that.
I just want to make sure that we say this out loud here. So follow us on Facebook, Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, because we're going to put all this information about the summit on there. So stay tuned, and please do follow us, follow Tom. This is incredible information. It's life-saving advice, but more important than life-saving, it's life-forming. It's about enjoying life. It's not just about length, the duration or amount of years, a month, or seconds that you live. It's about being alive here and now, and each and every second, each and every moment of life is a miracle. So thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll have you again, of course. And of course, we'll see you all for next Wednesday.